So they plan this surprise attack, and FDR refers to it as a day that will live in infamy.
Where
Okay?
does this one go?
This is in Pearl Harbor. It is December 7th, 1941. And Pearl Harbor, like we said when we were discussing what we already knew, was a big naval base in Hawaii. What happened was Japanese airplanes took off from aircraft carriers in the Pacific and by surprise bombed all of the naval ships that were stationed at Pearl Harbor. This was a big deal because it destroys a huge chunk of our Navy, and it also directly brings us into World War II because we're now at war with Japan. By declaring war on Japan, we also then are declaring war on all the Axis powers. So Germany and Italy as well, because remember they're an alliance. So as soon as we declared war on Japan, the Nazis and the Italians also declared war on us, so we're fighting all three of them. Yes?
You know what's scary?
What?
World War III will be nothing but nukes.
What?
Well, that's something that a lot of people fear, but I think that if that was to have happened, it would have happened in the Cold War. But since we never fought, I think it proves that humanity understands what would happen if that was to become the case. So anyways, shh, we're not going to have this discussion now. At the same time, the Japanese also invaded Wake Island, which was a U.S. colony. If you look on the map over here, this is where it is. It's close to Hawaii, somewhat. And they also are going to invade the Philippines. The Philippines was also an American colony. Since the Japanese were expanding so much, we had sent a big chunk of our military there, and they were led by Douglas MacArthur, who's a famous American general. He fought in World War I, also heavily in World War II, and then later on becomes a politician and works under some different presidents. So we had about 100,000 troops there, and they're going to get attacked by Japan, and this is all on the same day. But the big takeaway from this, if I was to ask you what is the importance or what is the significance of Pearl Harbor, it's that it causes the U.S. to enter the war. We were trying to stay neutral for as long as possible, but now the war has been brought to our doorstep, and we can't afford to do that any longer. All right, we have to defend ourselves. Can I go forward now?
No.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I will go back to it at the end if I need to. All right. So at the same time they invade the Philippines, and the biggest battle is the Battle of Bataan. We had a little over 100,000 soldiers there, and this was a big deal because one of our best generals, General MacArthur, was stationed there as well. We did not have enough forces to fully withstand an attack from the Japanese. They sent more than we had. And even though the Americans and Filipinos were able to put up some resistance, they're later forced to surrender. And when they surrender, the Japanese make them do something known as the Bataan Death March. And that's where the soldiers are forced to march 60 miles. Along the whole march, they're getting, beaten. It's the Philippines, so what's the climate like? Does anybody know? Super humid and hot, all right? So they're not given any water, no resources that you would need, and basically the American soldiers and Filipino soldiers are dropping like flies. By the end of it, 10,000 people were killed, 20,000 were wounded, and all the remaining 75,000 were just put in POW camps or prisoner of war camps. All right, and they will be held there until the Americans later rescue the Philippines from Japanese control in a few years. The big thing here is that General MacArthur is going to actually escape, and he's going to end up leading the entire American army, starting from America west throughout the Pacific. So he's going to play a very major role. He was reluctant to leave; he didn't want to. However, the President of the United States called him and said, "We're pulling you out. You don't have a choice in this. That is an order." And he told people before he left and made a promise that he will return to free everybody. So he does escape to Australia, and he takes a flight from the Philippines to Australia as like an emergency exit. Okay? Alright, so make sure you guys get that down. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into the Bataan Death March. We're going to look at a few different sources. There's 4 up here. Okay, one is a recruitment poster. Okay, one is it's a ticket to armistice or a ticket to surrender to the Japanese. The other is a picture from the Bataan Death March, and the last one is a link to a website that has a short video explaining, or it's a short video where they interview some of the veterans who were actually in the Bataan Death March. From these sources, all I want you to do is write a paragraph that explains what we learned about the Bataan Death March based off these sources. All 4 sources need to be used in your explanation. You have the rest of the class period to do this, so that's about 25 minutes.